Uma, I want to thank you for this interview. And I know that our relationship got started in a community forum where all of us were contributing to elevating others. And I still see you doing that continuously. So I'm truly amazed with your own conviction to making others great. And that's the reason I want to start this interview by asking you. I mean, this has been, I mean, you had a big journey so far, and you're in a good position where you are today, and you have and you're able to look at people in at different phases, different areas, and you're able to elevate them. What motivated you to get started in this attribution or contribution to others?
Yes, and Priya, again, so lovely to be reconnected. And we have a lot of synergies in the work that we do together. So always nice to collaborate with you.
Thank you.
I think it started because when I was early on in my career, I didn't think to, number one, ask for help. I always felt like I needed to figure things out on my own.
Okay.
As someone who felt like she was the only child. I have an adopted sister, but it did feel like I was the only child. And having a lot of messages from my parents that I needed to do well, but figure it out on my own.
Correct.
And throughout my career, I also didn't see a lot of women role models around me. I didn't think to look for them. I just figured that in a male-dominated industry like technology, it is how it is.
Correct.
And you got to figure your own path. So taking all of those learnings and then reading the book Lean In 2016, I was presented an aha moment, number one, actually two aha moments. One, upon reading the book, I felt like, wow, I am not alone. There are others who are going through some of these challenges. Like, she basically put some words into some of the things I experienced in my career. And number two, there's something that you can do about it. So I felt like, personally, reading through the book, burning the midnight oil because I couldn't put it down. I was like, wow, I got to tell everybody about this. And what can I do to spread this message? It really started from there.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I'm happy that it just didn't start and stop, right? I see you putting a lot of effort and growing the community and getting the message across. I should say, wonderful work, Uma.
Thank you.
But all of this, Uma, requires a lot of energy. You are a busy senior executive in a technology company, and then you are doing all of this community work. And I'm sure you're also mentoring people, doing a lot of. You wear multiple hats. Now, all of that takes energy. How do you take care of yourself across all levels?
I would say the two biggest lessons for me is, number one, as I went through a year of working with a life coach, discovering that, especially for women, particularly, and I'm starting to be a bit more vocal about this because it's made a big impact on me, we have to think about both time and energy management. And I am specifically referring to our cycles.
Yes.
Men produce testosterone every 15 minutes.
Yes.
We only produce testosterone for 6 days in our cycle.
Yes.
And in that cycle of anywhere between 28 to 32 days, that's going to differ by women. And if they're going through menopause, their cycle is most likely aligned to the lunar cycle. So everyone has a cycle. I've learned to figure out when I am best resting, when I am best to brainstorm and pitch ideas, and maybe when I'm best to build muscles in the gym as well. Right. All of those things. I've changed my calendar. And that was from reading the book Do Less by Kate Northrup, which I recommend for any women in the workplace. So I think thinking about both time and energy management for women, it's done wonders for me. So that's the first thing. And the second is, I've tried to avoid using the word busy because I think time means the same thing to all of us. Once it's over, you don't get it back. And so it's really precious. And so being mindful about where you spend your time at work and balancing that with your life foundations that are necessary. So for example, I'm a big believer on getting enough sleep. Some of my closest friends will tell you that when Alex and I got married last year, we were one of the first to leave our wedding while the rest partied on because we're like, right, we gotta sleep. And even for my hens night, I think my friends still joke about it today. Like they went on and I'm like, I'm going home because I gotta sleep. So sleep is like one of my primary foundations. Those are my non-negotiables. And then balancing that with what brings me joy and energy, the work that I do for Lean In. When I mentor a woman, when I'm able to help anyone be able to move forward or inspire and motivate them, it's color-coded purple on my calendar. This session is color-coded purple on my calendar.
Awesome.
So if I don't see purples during the week, because it's not about doing one big thing in a month, it's about consistently putting in time on what energizes you.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, this is really, I remember understanding this when I was going through, some form of journey to understand body, mind, and heart and soul. And I understand about this lunar phases. And while, I mean, it's good for women to focus on our leadership, keeping that in mind, right? So I'm very happy a person like you called it out. This is the first time I'm having a conversation where somebody has boldly called it out, Uma. Thank you so much. What are some of the challenges that you faced while creating this brand? Because there are some inner demons, there are biases, a lot of things that you would have battled to be where you are today.
Yeah.
Now, and now you are in a position to mentor others and perhaps help others. Now, what is it that is not visible for others today that you have gone through, Uma?
I think firstly is finding my voice. I still today would describe myself, if we had to divide the world into introverts and extroverts, I would describe myself as an introvert. I am more of a listener versus someone who speaks. I've had to learn how to be an extrovert because of what I do in the corporate world, but also what I do for the community. So, but at my resting state, I am an introvert. So finding my voice was the first big one for me. And I think the biggest misconception is that you gain confidence and then you do the task. But I have learned that you have to do the task to gain confidence. So, for example, if I am not one to speak up in a meeting, when I was starting out in my career, because I simply didn't have the confidence, so I had all these things in, the voice in your head that says, maybe what you're going to say is not that important. Or when you say something, someone's going to interrupt and you're going to let them interrupt you. Someone's going to steal your idea and you're going to let it be because maybe that person has a good reason and is going to make your idea better. Whatever voice in your head prevents you from speaking up. One of the things I forced myself to do was to say something. Like I'd say, excuse me, and then the whole room would look at you and then you'd have to say something. I'd force myself into those situations. So finding my voice is the first one. Second, when you have that voice, I think, how do you use it to share with others? I guess social media is a great platform. As an example, I use LinkedIn a lot, but I still think about, should I really say that? And I ask myself less of that now. And the biggest difference is I care less about what other people think. And I choose to only hear the voices of those who genuinely care about my well-being and success. I have chosen deliberately every year to ignore more voices that do not care about my well-being and success. And I think if you can get to that place, you become more brave about what you want to say. And you can get your true point of view across as long as you're doing it, respectfully, with kindness, all of those things, right? You're not trying to do it in a way that's disrespectful or creates discomfort. As long as, I think it's okay to create discomfort, but in a respectful way, if you're trying to invoke a dialogue. So I think finding my voice, only paying attention to those that truly care about my well-being and success. I think having a point of view is so important. And to do that, I have discovered that the most lethal, in a good way, superpower that you can have for your career is the ability to read data and tell stories.
Yes. What's your learning there? How did you discover the right combination or the art of storytelling in context where you can use your voice effectively, Uma?
Yeah. And I think it comes down to what you've always talked about as well, communication skills. Telling a story, I've discovered, is you have the content, but how you present that content when you verbalize it or when you write it out. And by the way, writing, I think, is still one of the most underrated skills. And those who can write well will also do well. But how do you say it in a concise way where you can get to the point of the story without losing the meaning of the story, in a concise and meaningful and authentic way, right? So I think it takes practice. Again, you got to do it to keep getting better versus trying to get to perfection and then do it. So I keep getting better at telling the same story. And you got to do it verbally and you got to do it in a written manner too, to make the story more powerful. But I think you're right. I mean, storytelling is not new, but I think people forget that at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we are attracted to those who are vulnerable and can open up to talk about things that aren't necessarily spoken about normally. And when you find those personalities and those stories somehow resonate with you for whatever reason, I find, like, for example, people of color might resonate with me, people who come from Malaysia might resonate, those who are Sri Lankans might resonate because of my name, whatever reason that you resonate with somebody. Right. And you're not going to be attracted to everyone's stories. You're looking for, wow, I really like that. I resonate with that. I've got something to learn from it. That's the pull factor that you create in storytelling.
Uma, how did you increase the deservability in your own eyes? How did you go about it?
I think Brene Brown's TED Talk on worthiness is still one that I would always go back to watch every year. Mm-hmm. When she did the research on vulnerability and figured out that, joy and happiness happens to those who feel worthy of that joy and happiness. That was such a light bulb moment for me when I first heard that. I fully respect and appreciate that we all come from a different block of wood or brick that we stand on. All our bricks look different. Some have taller bricks, some have wider bricks, some have bricks that are broken. But every day, we, especially any form of underrepresented minorities, be it gender or other aspects, we all struggle with that. And we're constantly seeking acceptance from others. My biggest lesson is I needed to love and accept what I saw in the mirror first. And I think when you do that, it's a huge pivot and it takes a lot of work on yourself. I think when you see people that have got it together, whatever that means to you, it's a reflection that they've done a lot of work on themselves.
I'm also curious to understand, you've been working on the partner ecosystem. You've been building that at work, and that's part of, you're building the tech ecosystem, and you're also a women in sales ecosystem, a lot of things happening around that. What is your thoughts on how women can, is it natural that they're good at relationship building, empathy, and so that's why you're great at what you're doing? Or is there something else that you've put in there that's why you're really doing well there, Uma?
I think the first thing to know is that every single one of us are unique. There is no other Priya that has your brain, that has the things that, for example, what you pay attention to may not be the things that other people pay attention to. What you pick out or observe may not be what other people observe. What brings you energy is going to be different. So I think if you can figure out what are your red threads, as Markham Buckingham wrote in the book Love Plus Work, where he says, ask yourself some of these questions to discover what is it that makes you unique, that therefore, how can you make the most of it into converting that to passion that you can deliver at work? I found out in my first sales job, for example, at IBM, that I really loved working with people, right? The introvert. I was more of an introvert. Then I was like, wow, I'm actually not bad at working with customers. And I liked it. So I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed during the process, and I loved the feeling after the process, right? So that's one big clue to give yourselves, right? And I think you should learn to notice the things that you notice that other people don't. I notice things that a lot of people go like, I didn't see that. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. But then you notice it, like you should pay attention to that. What is it that people had to tear you away when you were so engrossed in doing something? People had to drag you away from it, or you lost track of time when you were doing something. This morning I was doing something that was, number one, related to women. Number two was about bringing people together. And I was trying to connect people. I say that I'm a connector. I was trying to connect this bunch of people with this. And as I was doing it, I was like, man, I love this. I won't say the four-letter word. So, that's the thing that you need to pay attention to, that gives you an indicator of whether or not you're doing a role, or you're doing a role or delivering a scope that you enjoy. Because I think when that passion comes through, I always say that I never set out to be a leader. And it's when I figured out how could I express myself fully, authentically, genuinely, all of me, and that expression becomes of value to other people, that's when you become a leader. It's got nothing to do with my title or all of that. Of course, that helps. It means that I have a bigger platform. I have more potentially power to impact change. And then the question is, what am I going to do with it if I have those things, right? But everybody has privilege, platform, and power. It just looks different for each one of us, no matter where you are, right? So
correct. I mean, it's good. The lens through which you look at what you can do can change the outcomes, right? And I see that has shaped you, Uma. So it's fantastic to hear that. Now, I'm also curious to understand, there's a lot of talk around, of course, diversity, inclusion, equity, a lot of those things organizations are working, and, each one of us is looking at it in a different lens. From your vantage point, how are you observing the climate and culture around this changing, Uma?
Yeah, I try to use diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging together.
Mhm.
And I think it's a great evolution from, we used to just say D and I, right? And we are evolving in terms of how we think about inclusion, and everyone has so many terms out there on what they believe is important. I think I will just speak from my own point of view. And I'll give a few examples. You know, we have people who are starting out their careers joining VMware, and some of them we've taken into a special projects office where they get to work with senior leaders. I'm curious to see if that accelerates their career in any way, because they get to be the fly on the wall, for example, and they get to interact directly with senior leadership, but then they're put in a position where they got to accelerate those skills faster, right? By the time you come to me, for example, you better be prepared on what you want to talk about.
Right.
And you got to make it concise. Yeah, right. You got to follow up on the actions, because I don't micromanage at my level, right? So, and then we have people who come not from tech and not from, let's say, for the ecosystem part of my business. And you have to think about, okay, how do I help this person be successful? One, I got to give them more time. Number two, I got to inform everybody else to be more mindful. For example, if we're on Zoom calls and we start using acronyms that only we know about, and this person doesn't know because never came from tech, new to VMware, and new to a partner ecosystem, everybody's got to pause and explain the acronym, right? I used to record meetings so that people like that could go back and listen to the recording and come and ask me questions, right? So I think you got to have different considerations. And I'm still a big believer from my work at Lean, and it is one person at a time. No matter what DEI, and I love the belonging addition to it, that's my perspective, because yes, you can have the best programs and you can feel like you are being supported. But if, for example, I'm the only female engineer in a group, do I truly feel like I belong? Do I truly feel like I am included? Do I feel like my voice matters? I think belonging is another aspect to it. But for me, one person at a time is how all of us can impact change.
Absolutely, very well said, Uma. Uma, I just want to ask you one of our wrapping questions, if I may call it. What is one story that has stood with you that you would that has defined you, and you'll be very proud to say that many years later?
Yeah. Well, I am grateful that I have many of those, but perhaps I will share the first story of my career, which I've shared before. And that is when I was given my first interview for a job after I graduated from university. And at this time, I was living in a single bedroom with 3 other girls, and everyone was already finding jobs. One of those girls had a sister that worked at IBM and knew of an IBM distributor who was willing to hire a fresh graduate systems engineer. And so that's how I got my first interview, and that taught me the power of networks. And, you know, throughout my career, you know, one of the biggest move I made came from an unexpected source, you know, someone in a back-end role in a random company that said to a headhunter company they should talk to me. So the power of networks have always been one that is powerful for me. I show up at this interview, and the general manager of the company says, right, we're ready to offer you the job on the spot, right? Here's the salary, 1,800 ringgit. And at that time, I think that was the going rate. It was like he nailed it, because I knew what my friends were earning. And I was like, wow, wouldn't it be nice if I had my own room, slept on my own bed, you know, for a change? And I was like, and I want to live in this area. Like, this is in a matter of seconds, right? Because I didn't know I was going to be offered the job on the spot. So I said, well, I think you should offer me 2,200 ringgit, because I knew I needed like $400 to get that room. And I think he was so shocked that he said yes. And so that's the power of asking. So asking, you shall most likely receive. So for the rest of my career, I always asked. And I think there's a way in asking. I had no negotiation strategy whatsoever, except that I wanted to sleep in my own bed and in my own room. But I learned from getting a yes that I was like, wow, you can actually ask. So I just asked, for the rest of my career. And even if you get a no, you've put the ask out there. There's this thing about you got to put what you want out there to the universe for the universe to respond back to you. So yeah, I think that's still today. I mean, I feel less shy about asking. But yeah, those two stories.
I know. I mean, I think I heard you share this in our Lean In network as well, and I think it's a very powerful story. And I think it's something that comes to using your voice effectively as well, right? So it's really really nice to for you to share it. And I think many people may have heard it, but I think it's a good reiteration for them, right?
Yeah.
So, a lot of women whom I see these days have a sense of overwhelm, and I don't know whether the pandemic has resulted in
Yeah.
it, or there's this imbalance that they are trying to fight. Now, what are some tweaks? I wouldn't want to call hacks, but I want to call it as tweaks. What would you suggest as some mental tweaks that can help women, really move forward in their life and leadership?
Yeah, I mean, during the pandemic, I created boundaries. I think that's so important. For example, I did not work after 5 p.m. And I communicated that to my team. And what I said to them is that if anything was important, they can pick up the phone and call me. And guess what? I rarely got any calls. It wasn't that important. They couldn't wait till the next morning. So I think we feel like we are so undeserving of this opportunity that's given to us that we find ourselves that we want to keep pedaling, right? We're iceberg on top, and then we keep pedaling to want to do more and show up more. And I got to show that I deserve to be here. Right. So deservability, as you said. So I think having boundaries is one. And it's a great book. Setting Boundaries Will Set You Free. I think it's Nancy Levitt. So that's a great book. The other one is coming back to what I said earlier. Are you doing the things to fill up your cup? I stopped work at 5 o'clock because I had like 10 COVID goals for myself. One of the goals was to work out every day. Even if it's 5 minutes, I wanted to do something, right? So I had to create a system like stopping work at 5, communicating that so that, consistently I could do it. Of course, I missed some days, but generally I did that. So I think, what is it that you are doing to fill up your cup? Some people say it's self-care, but I just think of it as, am I filling up my cup so that I can give to others? Because I think as women, we do a lot of giving. Yes. We also need to learn how to receive from others, from our partners, from our friends, from the support system that we have around us, like receiving a compliment, right? First thing women say is, oh, it wasn't me, it was a team effort. Like, say thank you for a change. So you got to receive, and then you got to fill your cup. And filling your cup is doing the things that bring you joy and energy. And you got to do that every week versus I'm just going to take 2 hours on one Saturday in 2 months to go to the spa. That's not
true.
That doesn't work. At least it didn't work for me. I needed to do a little bit of it every week. Yeah.
I know. This is really actually what we really need to do, is give ourselves the permission to do the things that we truly deserve, right? And let's do, as you rightly said, fill your cup so that you can give more, and actually also receive more so that you can, be a fulfilled human being in this world, right? Rather than saying, oh, I wish I had that. So it's really nice to hear you share some of the very key messages that are going to help a lot of people, Uma.
Thank you. I hope that was helpful. And thank you for the work that you are doing, Priya. So much that you're doing outside of your day-to-day responsibilities. and glad to be on this journey with you, and was really great to collaborate again.
Thank you and take care and all the very best to you.
All right, take care. Thanks.